Welcome to the Verts Podcast. I am your host, as always, Sonny Weaver. I'm happy to be back after a brief hiatus here. We're happy to get started. We're going to do a special tonight. We're going to go ahead and do a prediction preview for the upcoming season of NBL. Alongside me tonight, I've got a special guest host. He is the host of the 2-point conversion, TFA. How you doing tonight, TFA?
I'm doing pretty good to be here.
That's great to hear. We're happy to have you. Like I said, we are going to go through and do our predictions for each team in each division. One thing I'd like to point out is at the end of the show, make sure you stick around because I do have a big announcement here for the Verts Podcast and as we move into the future, what we'll be doing. But first off, let's go ahead and get to these predictions because I think that's what everybody wants to hear. So first up, I've got the AFC North. I've got the Steelers at the top at 14-2. I've got the Bengals second at 11-5. Browns at 9-7, and the Ravens at 4-10. So, thought process here. To do this, I went through every game on the schedule and I picked a winner. So obviously, for every winner, there's got to be a loser. So all my records add up. 14-2. I just don't see a lot of losses on the horizon for Lip. I think he's going to have another good season. They only got better. The trade for Norwood, the tight end from the Jaguars, I think was a big move. They've got their 3 returning wide receivers who each had 1,000 yards on the season last year. I think the defense only gets better. So I expect big things from the Steelers. Obviously, I've got the Bengals at 11-5. I think the free agent additions of Brian Quick and Chris Matthews give our team and Andy Dalton viable receiving options. Jeremy Hill will obviously be around for the whole season this year after missing a good portion of it last year. And then obviously the thing everybody talks about is the addition of Altron Werner. Yes, probably overpaid just a little bit. However, you've got some protection on the opposite side of Denard. I think second-year man Hood playing out of the slot's going to be much improved, so I think the defense will get better. So Bengals at 11-5, followed that up by the Browns at 9-7. I think the Browns defense takes a step forward because they can't get much worse from last year. They drafted really well with 3 really good picks in the second round. It'll be interesting to see how that ends up there. The linchpin to that whole thing will be Johnny Manziel, how he does throwing the ball. Will he be on point or will he sink that team? The Browns found a little momentum at the end of last year, beating the Saints without really having to complete a pass or get yards on offense. So maybe they found something there. So I think we see improvement out of the Browns this year at 9-7, fighting for a wild card spot. And then the back is brought up by the Ravens at 4-12. The Ravens may not show a lot of improvement in the records. However, I think this team's getting better. They bring over Nassib from Cincinnati. They go out and get some good pieces to go on that team. I'm thinking they got the pass rush now, so they may not get many more wins in the win-loss column, but I think this team's going to be improved and probably a year away from really making some solid improvement in the win-loss column.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really at the top of the division. I've got us in a 3-way tie, actually, for first in the division. I have the Steelers, the Browns, and the Bengals all at 11-5. I think Lip is going to win the division. I think he's going to win the tiebreaker and take home the division. I think it's going to be really tight, though, and I think he's going to have an issue kind of deciding whether or not to start Big Ben or if he's going to start Lucky. He was really lucky in the draft, and he managed to get a great quarterback, and I think he's going to run into some controversy there, so I'm going to be really interested to see how he deals with it and handles it throughout the season. And, if he has a little midseason blow-up, and we'll see what happens with that. I think you're going to do great this year. Like you said, Jeremy Hill being there for the whole season, I think that's really going to benefit you as a team. It's going to, really get your running game going, even though Gio Bernard had a great season last year filling in. My Browns, I have us at 11-5. You had us at 9-7. Like you said, I think the defense is going to be a lot better this year. At least I'm hoping. We'll see how that goes. They had a really good draft, so we'll see where those pieces fall. And then the Ravens, I have them at 3-13. I think they're going to struggle against the division this year, but they played great last year, and who knows who this team's going to be? They ended up beating the Panthers last year, so who knows what team is going to show up for the Ravens?
Like you said, the Ravens are going to be hard to figure out. I think it will be a battle for the top three, and I think we're probably getting 2 into the playoffs this year, hopefully, maybe 3, but we'll see how it plays off. Moving to the AFC East. The AFC East, the standings I've got are the Patriots at 13-3, the Bills at 8-8, Dolphins at 4-12, and Jets at 4-12. I've got the Patriots backsliding a little bit down to 13-3, only for the fact that winning 15 games is hard. That's hard any season. I don't have anybody really having that kind of record this year. So I think the Patriots are going to be there. Probably take a couple losses, maybe even drop one. I think I had them dropping one late in the season. They probably shouldn't. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. The Bills at 8-8 are kind of a wild card to me. And when I say wild card, I mean, yes, they could make the wild card, but also I think they really could fall anywhere from that 7-9 up to 9-7. I've got them at 8-8, but there were a lot of toss-ups in there. It'll be interesting to see how they go. A lot of it comes down to divisions you're playing in matchups. I think they're going to be there at the end of the year. Probably not for the division, but they'll be in the hunt for a wild card. The Dolphins I've got at 4-12. I think the Dolphins are an interesting team. They may be a year or two away. They've gotten better. They got some good guys on that team. They drafted well. They took the cornerback Slaughter. He was kind of an unknown. Not going to the combine. I think a lot of teams were worried about that, but Slaughter looks to be legit, and so we'll see how the Dolphins go. I think this year's probably a year too early for them. I think we're looking at next year before they're really challenging this division or for a wild card spot. So I've got them at 4-12. I could see them going from anywhere from 4-12 up to 6-10. And then bringing up the rear, I got the Jets at 4-12. The Jets 4-12 maybe on the higher side. I could see them going downward a little bit, but they got a lot of work to do still on that team. They took the center early. I think the center was probably a little too high in the draft to be taken. Probably could have waited and got him in the second first round pick of the draft. Would have liked to have seen them to add more of an impact player early in the draft, but hindsight's 2020. They probably should have taken Lucky Jordan, the quarterback that Pitt ended up taking, but they ended up with a pretty good quarterback themselves, and it'll be interesting to see how he develops. But I think you're looking at a top 5 pick again for the Jets next year, and they'll be in the running maybe for number 1.
Patriots, I have agree that they're going to be right there at the top of the division. I am struggling a little bit more this year. I've got them at 12-4. You had them at 13-3. I think they're going to struggle against the AFC North. It's a much better division. I think they're going to have to play the top teams, and I think they might struggle a little bit with that. I could see them definitely having a problem with the 3 of us here at the top of the AFC North. At 7-9, you had them at 8-8, but like you said, you had them anywhere in that 7-9, 9-7 range. So anywhere in there is where I could see this team falling. They had a pretty good offseason, so we'll see where they end up. I have the Dolphins as a wild like you. I have them going 6-10. It's kind of hard to see where this team's going to. They were the mystery of the offseason, taking Slaughter, like you said. So who knows where this team's going to fall? I could see them going anywhere from 4-12, like you said, up to 9-7, or it's kind of a mystery where this team's going to fall. And then I have Delvar and the Jets actually at the bottom of the division at 2-14. I think they're going to have one of the worst records this year. I just don't think they did enough to improve the team in the offseason. They really struggled last year, and I just didn't see any parts added this season. And I didn't really see a sense of urgency heading into into this offseason and the preseason.
Yeah, so we're pretty close there, like you said. It'll be interesting on the bottom side. A lot of times you watch the top. I think the bottom of this division will be interesting as you got the Dolphins and the Jets kind of battling it out. Where that goes, it'll be interesting to see. But, Delvar and the Jets, they got a lot of work to do there. So let's head over to the AFC South. Now, if you guys listened to the draft coverage, as I was talking, I mentioned the Houston Texans as my sleeper this year to win this division. And when you go through the games and you pick every game, the records at the end of the year are what they are when you're doing that. So in doing that, they did not come out on top. I had the Titans at 9-7, Texans at 8-8, Colts at 6-10, and the Jaguars at 3-13. I really liked what the Titans did in the offseason. I think they made some good moves. They bring in Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie from the Giants. Had a solid draft. Probably not earth-shattering, but still a very good draft. The Titans, they may finally be getting into their groove after a couple years at the bottom of the division. So I've got the Titans at 9-7. Texans at 8-8. I think the Texans at 8-8 could easily be the 9-7 team and swap with the Titans. I like the way they came on last year. They just faded down the backstretch. That could be due to ownership not being used to being in that playoff hunt. So I think you're really looking at a team that could be really good next year. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Colts down at 6-10. I think they fall off a little bit this year. That's an aging roster. They didn't do a ton. They took the halfback Broussard a little early, but I think they had other needs on that team they probably could have gone with. It was more of a value pick to them, but I'm not sure how much he's going to help them out this year in a halfback by committee setup. So little fall off from the Colts. I think they'll be back maybe in a year or two, but just not this year. And then the Jaguars at 3-13. They're looking at a top 5 draft pick again next year. I played them in the preseason. The biggest issue with them is they lack depth. Their backups aren't very good. So any injury is going to really derail this team going forward. I think they're still needing a couple pieces on the offense. The offense is lacking a little bit. So I'm looking at the Jaguars as another top 5 pick next year.
Yeah, we had the same exact records for the teams in this division. I have the Titans also at 9-7. I think they're going to win the division, but I think they're going to struggle a little bit more this season. They have to play the AFC West, and that's going to be a really tough division this year. I think all 4 teams over there can compete. So I think that we're going to see a little bit of a drop off from everybody in this division. I do think Cuba and the Texans, though, he finishes at 8-8, but I think he can definitely compete for this division. He might be able to sneak out a few wins from the AFC West this year and really make things interesting in the AFC. He came on real strong. He got the most improved last year. So I see this Texans team heading in the right direction. I have the Colts, just like you do, at 6-10. I think they're going to struggle a little bit. I think this team needs to start getting a little bit younger, and I think they're on the right path to doing so. I just don't really see all of the pieces there this year that they're going to be able to compete with. And then the Jaguars, I have them at 5-11. Who didn't play them in the preseason like you did. So, I didn't get to see their team firsthand, but I think that the defense on this team, if the defense in the rushing game can get back to what it was a couple of seasons ago, I think that they can squeeze out a few extra wins this season.
Yeah, like I said, it's an advantage to get to play someone in the preseason. So things can change, obviously, especially with that Jaguars team. I think if they stay healthy, there's a shot that could be a little better than what I have them at, but we'll have to find out going forward. So the last division, a very competitive division in the AFC, is the AFC West. I've got the Chargers at the top at 12-4, Raiders 9-7, Broncos 9-7, and Chiefs 7-9. And I know somewhere right now, Project Fat is breathing a sigh of relief as he's been desperately waiting to see where Sonny Weaver was going to put his Raiders. So Fat, relax. You're 9-7, and you're going to get that winning record. So starting at the top, the Chargers, 12-4 is obviously a step back for them. I don't think it's more so anything than just a little bit of a down year. 12-4 is still a very good record. I'd have them as the 3rd seed in the AFC right now, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. They're Super Bowl runner-ups last year. They added Timmons, they added KJ Wright, so they solidified the linebacking core. Draft didn't do much for them, but they picked up a couple nice pieces, and I think this team's going to stay on top of the division. Next up, I've got the Raiders and the Broncos battling it out at 9-7. The Raiders, I think, had a really good offseason. They picked up Golden Tate, had a good draft, got the linemen they needed. They've kind of pushed off getting linemen in the draft historically, so I think that anytime they can build from that line, I think they're going to have a rough start to the season as those linemen mature. But as the season progresses, I think they'll have a shot, and they'll be in the hunt for a playoff spot. Now, what's interesting is I only had 6 losses for them on my chart originally, but I went back and added a 7th loss. The reason I did that is because, I think there's going to be a letdown loss in there somewhere. So that could snowball if he doesn't just do the one letdown loss, he has 2 or 3. That's what's going to take him from being a 9-7 possible playoff contender down to 7-9. And once again, not getting that winning record that he's been looking for. So as far as the Broncos go, I think the Broncos came on last year at the end pretty well. I think they lost some key linemen, and so the line's going to need some work. I think as the year goes on, they're going to get better. But they start with quite the gauntlet in the first 4 games. They're starting with playoff caliber teams. So I've actually had the Broncos starting off very bad to start the year, but kind of picking it up towards the end with the weaker side of their schedule, finding a way to get to 9-7, and they'll be in that wild card hunt. And then trailing, I've got the Chiefs at 7-9, and really what that came down to is somebody's got to lose this division. I think the Chiefs did the least amount to improve. I looked over their roster. I think they've got the worst roster in the division, which meant somebody had to lose some of those division games. I got the Chiefs at 7-9, but that could easily flip. Obviously, 9-7, 9-7, 7-9. Flip some coins, and that whole thing could flip. But the only thing I feel comfortable about is Chargers coming out on top.
Completely different rankings here. I've got the Chiefs sitting at the top at 12-4. I think this team came on strong towards the end of the season. They beat Lip in the playoffs, the defending Super Bowl champion. I really think that this team, playing some of the bottom feeders in the AFC after where they finished last season, can definitely go on a little bit of a run here. They're going to be playing all of the third best teams in each of the AFC divisions. So I can see them picking up a couple more wins this year. I can see the Chargers also falling off a little bit, not too much. I have them going 11-5. I don't think that any of these teams really in the AFC West to the top, other than the Raiders, did a whole lot in the offseason. I think they
Lawrence
all could have
Timmons.
done. Well, we can agree to disagree there, but
KJ Wright.
I think they could have all done a little bit more to improve their teams. I think they kind of got really comfortable at the top and where they were. So we'll see how
DK
that
did
ends
so
up.
much that he actually got a whole new rule named after him. So you got to feel like DK at least was doing something over there with the Chargers to get a whole new rule based around him.
That is true. I will give you that one. After that, I have the Raiders actually at 10-6. I gave Project Fat a little bit of love here. I think that he had one of the best off seasons. I think he did a good job in free agency. I think he did a good job, like you said, addressing his needs in the draft. He got some linemen. He really beefed up non-key position players this year, and I think that he's going to have a good season this year. And then I have the Broncos kind of pulling up the rear at 8-8. I think Beckley's going to struggle this year. We've seen it in the past with Beckley. Season 1 this year, he really struggled with his quarterback and threw a lot of interceptions. I could definitely see Cole Parker, Rookie of the Year, coming back this year and having a sophomore slump. So I can see him going 8-8 this season.
Yeah, I like Parker a lot. I think he'll be okay. But like you said, that division is such a crap shot that really I think anybody could come out and finish in 4th there. So we're going to roll over to the NFC now. Looking at the NFC North, we'll start off with. I've got the Lions at 13-3. I've got the Vikings at 11-5. The Packers at 6-10, and the Bears at 4-12. Lions 13-3, very good record, obviously. It's hard. It's hard to get wins, and it's hard not to take a couple losses. I think the Lions drop a couple. They've got a tough schedule. They play some really good teams this year, and I think there's a rematch with the Falcons, possibly the Chargers in there, even the Seahawks. So a lot of good teams this year for the Lions to play, and I think they take a couple losses, but I think they still come out okay. It'll be interesting to see how that offense operates without Golden Tate. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. Vikings at 11-5. I think they're really building something in Minnesota. They had a big win last year over the Giants in the wild card round. That was huge for them, and I think Corbett's going to build on that good rookie year and keep running well. They lose Stephon Diggs, but they go ahead draft his replacement in the draft. So I think the Vikings stay about par for course and go 11-5, and then I got the Packers at 6-10. It's new ownership there. It's not a great roster to start with, but I think looking at their schedule, they're going to pick up some wins. I'm familiar with with management there as their former owners in the league, so I think Packers have a rough year this year, but next year will be the year that they really bring it on a little bit. So trailing up the rear in this division is the Bears at 4-12, and I know everybody's looking at me and saying 4-12. Yes, 4-12. I think the Bears see some improvement. Obviously, they go with the cornerback Wilson. They still got a lot of holes on that team, but I think the Bears are steadily improving. I think they're still probably looking at a top 5, top 10 pick this year coming forward, but I think much like the Ravens, they're looking a lot better on the field, and that's a good moral victory for the Bears.
Yeah, I have the Lions as well at 13-3. I think Bomber's going to suffer a couple losses. I don't think the loss of Golden Tate's going to be that important this season. He's got Ricky Benson over there. He's got Matt Hopkins. He got both of those players last draft, and they definitely produced last season. And you definitely saw, a spark of brilliance from both of those guys. So I think he's going to be fine with Golden Tate gone. My worry is that, pretty soon he's going to start having to find a replacement for Calvin. So we'll see kind of if Calvin has a decline this year, and we'll see how that team ends up. I have the Vikings at 9-7. You had them at 11-5. I think they're going to lose a couple more games this season. You never really know with APV. One year he could be 11-5, and the next year he could be 5-11. So you never really know where he's going to end up. I think he might have a little bit of a down year this year. Playing the NFC East, I think Tom will get revenge, and I think that division might have a little bit of a better year this year. I have the Packers as a wild card in this division at 8-8. I don't really know a whole lot about the new ownership there, but I could see them getting a few wins outside of the division and getting a few wins in the division against the Bears. And then I have the Bears at 2-14. I think Bob's going to struggle again this year. I think he did a great job in the draft. I was really happy with the way he went at cornerback. He's gotten a cornerback in back-to-back drafts. So he's definitely building that secondary, but it's going to be really interesting to see, if it's going to pay off in the long run. Like you said, he's got a lot of holes on that team. And I don't know if going back-to-back corners is going to be the right decision, but we'll find out this season.
Yeah, honestly, I would have liked to have seen Bob trade back out of that number one pick. I think when you've got that many holes on a team, it's about accumulating. You know personally that you do real well in the second round. I would have liked to see maybe pick up another first round pick as well as some extra seconds and something into the future. So, I would have liked to see more out there, but I still think we're getting an improvement out of the Bears, and the Lions should once again take that division for the fifth straight season. Honestly, they've really never been challenged. Could this be the year the Vikings do it? Not real sure. I know that they've been competitive with the Lions, but I just don't think so. So, rolling over to the NFC East, I've got the Giants on top at 11-5. I've got kind of my hot team of the year this year at the Redskins at 9-7. I've got the Cowboys at 7-9, and the Eagles at 4-12. Giants bring in former Eagle, former Cowboy DeMarco Murray. They get some protection during the draft for Teddy Bridgewater. I think. The season kind of derailed last year once Bridgewater got hurt against those Eagles. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out this year, if Bridgewater can stay healthy, or if that's going to be an issue going forward. What to me is interesting are the Washington Redskins. I've got them at 9-7. I know record-wise that may be a little bit of a step back, but I tried to take a pessimistic view to a lot of these guys. I think the Redskins so far in the preseason have shown off that offense. It was number one rated offense last year. They can really air it out. It'll be interesting to see if they can continue to do that this year. I like them to challenge the Giants. I've got them a couple wins back right now, but that could easily flip, especially if Bridgewater goes down again. So excited about those Redskins. Think they're going to have some big wins this year. Cowboys at 7-9. I think Osa Rosemond, the wide receiver they drafted in the first round, is a legit talent to go opposite of Dez Bryant. They're going to be a contender this year. I know they were looking to get some more secondary help. Secondary is not the strong suit of this division. I know the Giants lost Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, so I think you're going to see a lot of airing it out in this division, but I think the Cowboys are just going to miss that 500 record. I can see them sneaking up to 8-8 or 9-7, but I think I like the Redskins a little bit better in this division. And then trailing is the Eagles. They cut DeMarco Murray. A lot of question marks in Eagle land. They had a rough year last year. I think they're looking at another rough year this year. They got a cornerback that they feel pretty comfortable with, but I think that Eagles as a whole is going to need some work. The offense, it really doesn't have a direction. They're looking at changing offensive coordinators, so we'll see what happens. But like I said, Giants 11-5, Redskins 9-7, Cowboys 7-9, Eagles 4-12.
Yeah, we had a few differences in this division as well. I definitely have the Giants going 11-5. I could see them losing a few games to the NFC North and just kind of struggling a little bit. But I think they did some good things in the offseason, especially adding DeMarco. I think October is really going to kick himself when he has to go up against him twice a season. I do have October actually having a better season this year. I think he's going to finish off at 10-6, come up second in the division. He didn't really do a whole ton this offseason, but he did manage to trade up in the draft. He got himself a cornerback, so he got himself a number one cornerback in Clay. And I think that's really going to pay off for him. I hope that this defense can kind of hold up because I don't think the offense is quite where he wants it to be. So we'll see if he struggles putting points on the board. And if he can't get his offense going, I can definitely see that win total dropping. I was really surprised with Doughboy last season, how he finished. I think this season he's going to have a little bit of a drop off. I think he's going to finish at 7-9. The only reason I say that is because I think October is going to have a better year, so he might lose a couple more games in division. But I think Doughboy is going to have a right there in an average year to 7-9. I can see the Cowboys at 5-11. I think they're going to have a little bit of a drop off this year. I do like Rosemond, the wide receiver that they drafted in the draft, but I can see this team kind of having a little bit of a fall off if some people are kind of competing a little bit closer and tighter. So we'll kind of see how this division plays out. I think this is a really interesting division to watch because I think from top to bottom, this division can go just about any way. I could see McGiblets taking those Cowboys and making them 11-5 and winning the division. And I can also see Tom having a rough season and slipping down to 6-10 or 5-11.
Yeah, that division will be one that I think battles throughout this season. So moving on to the NFC South, this is a two-horse race. I've actually got the Falcons and the Panthers both sitting atop the division at 13-3. Then there's a pretty steep drop-off. I've got the Saints at 5-11, and the Bucs at 2-14. So you've got the returning Super Bowl champions at 13-3. They obviously got better through the draft, made some moves in free agency. Probably not all the moves they were looking to make, but they made some pretty decent moves. So tons of cap. They cut Matt Ryan this year. He just gets picked up by the Cincinnati Bengals today. So they're going young at quarterback down there in Atlanta. That'll be interesting to watch as we go forward. I think the Falcons still probably come out as division champions. I think they snake away with the tiebreaker over the Panthers and once again win that division. Once again, Panthers at 13-3. Good team, but a lot of veteran turnover. They lose Johnson, the defensive end. They lose Olsen, the tight end. It'll be interesting to see how that team works going forward. Can Cam Newton carry that team? That's a question mark there, but I still think they find a wild card berth at the very least. Saints improved to 5-11, and I think the Saints are on a little bit of an upward trend. They're doing well. They bring in Munnerlyn, the cornerback, and along with a couple other good defensive players. I think you see a little bit slight improvement there from the Saints as they keep moving forward. And then you get the Bucs at 2-14. I think obviously that Bucs offense was pretty dynamic last year, but that defense is horrible, and it just got worse. They cut Altron Vern along with the rest of their secondary this offseason. While they drafted a lot on the defensive side of the ball, I don't know if that defense is going to be ready to perform this year. Maybe setting up for a pretty nice year next year, but I think this year they're looking at a top 5 pick.
Yeah, I have the Panthers actually winning this division. I don't think they really did a whole lot in the offseason, but I do think that the few pieces they brought in, especially at tight end in the draft, I have them going 14-2. And just because I have them beating the Falcons one extra time this year, I have them sweeping the Falcons this year. But as we know, regular season doesn't mean anything with these Falcons. The Panthers can beat the Falcons all they want in the regular season, but it seems to be the Falcons that always perform in the postseason. I have the Falcons at 12-4. I think they had a great draft, great offseason. So we'll see how this team plays out. They could be the best team in the league and go ahead and go back to back in the Super Bowl, and we'll see what happens with one and only in the Falcons. I have the Saints actually. I think Frylock this year, this is my bold prediction this year. I think Frylock's going to win the most improved this year. I have the Saints at 6-10. He's really been doing a good job building that team. He started off the first 2 seasons this year, winless, and it's really good to see him coming along and see him drafting a team and kind of getting to use these players that he's drafted first overall in back-to-back years. And he's always been right there at the top, and I think he's actually going to have a pretty good season this year. So I have him at 6-10. And then I have the Buccaneers actually getting the number 1 pick in the draft this year at 1-15. Like you said, I think their team just has holes all over the place. It didn't get any better. Last year was a real bad year for this team. And I think having to go up against the Panthers and Falcons 4 times a year is really taking a toll on this team. So I think they have a long way to go if they're going to improve.
Yeah, not one of the more exciting divisions, but the race at the top I think will be very entertaining down the stretch there in the NFC South. NFC West, I got the Seahawks at 12-4, Rams at 9-7, 49ers at 4-12, and the Cardinals at 3-13. Seahawks had a pretty good season last year. I expect the same. The number 1 overall defense. They look to the draft to get a wide receiver, as well as a linebacker to replace KJ Wright. I like what they did in that draft, and I think giving them the receiver to help Russell Wilson's only going to make them better. So I like the Seahawks to win that division at 12-4. The Rams I have at 9-7. They had a little bit of a fall off last year. I expect to see the Draco defense come back. Still some questions on the offensive side of the ball. They cut Brian Quick. Still some questions at quarterback especially, but I think the Rams find a little bit of comfort in the schedule they're going to play, and they come away at 9-7. Cardinals and 49ers, they're kind of a coin flip. I got the 49ers at 4-12 and the Cardinals at 3-13. That came down to a game they played against each other. It could go either way. I think the 49ers, they keep signing older players. I think they're looking more at name than player, performance. I'm not sure that roster's really ready to win yet. I think it's got a lot of holes in it that are going to need to be improved. Cardinals, on the other hand, I think have a pretty good roster. They add a nice tight end in the draft. They add a left tackle. They're protecting the young quarterback Wheeler. I still think they've got some things to improve on. They were in a lot of tight games last year that kind of fell off down the stretch. That is a team that could easily go from 3-13 to 8-8. I think a lot of it just comes down to how they actually perform in the games, because I think the roster's there to win now, but it just comes down to how they perform on the field.
Yeah, I have the Seahawks at 11-5 this year. I think one of the least talked about things in this offseason, especially the draft, was the Seahawks' first round pick and Darius Pruitt, right outside linebacker. I mean, this guy could be one of the best linebacking prospects we've ever seen drafted in NBL. He came out of this draft and he is a star already. He's stepping on the field and he's going to take a big toll on other teams, as they step onto the field with this linebacking core in Seattle. So I have them at 11-5. I think that you had him at 12-4, but I think he's going to lose a few games to lesser opponents. I think that, there are going to be a few surprises over there. I don't think they're going to be very consistent from time to time. I have the Rams at 10-6. You really never know what Draco's going to do. One year he has the best defense in the league, and, the next year he's nowhere to be found. So you really have no idea how this Rams team is going to perform. The Cardinals, I have them at 5-11. I really love the Cardinals roster. I like what Play is doing over there. And Play is one of those guys that, he can really, really struggle against bad competition, but he can step up and play, against just about anybody in the league. I've seen him have great games versus really good competition. And then, he faces, really bad competition and he gets blown out. So you never know what's going to happen with Play. And then I have the 49ers pushing off at 4-12. I just didn't see that team get better, but I didn't really see him get worse. So I think they're going to, finish right there near the bottom again this season.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought there with the 49ers as well. Just one of those things where I think they're spinning their wheels and a little bit of a shake-up's needed. So those are our predictions for the years. Obviously, some of you will agree with us, some of you will hate us, some of you will send us nasty hate mail, and that's okay. As always, we like to hear feedback. Now for the thing that I've been kind of excited to talk about. The Verts Podcast is actually going to change our format going forward. This will be the last show that's specifically centered around gameplay on the field as far as wins and losses for NBL. We are going to make a move in talking with management towards more of a Madden-centric, CFM-centered thought leadership program. So we're going to start talking about how NBL fits in the greater scheme of Madden as well as CFM. We're going to bring on some really good guests. I'm proud to announce that next week we'll have Shopmaster from EA Game Changers Live on EA's Twitch, as well as the CFM movement. So we're going to be bringing on some guests to talk about different things going on around the Madden community, and we'll get our take on how NBL and our rules and things fit into that. And we'll also be talking about things going on in NBL outside of the games themselves. So we'll be talking about new rules, why they happen, what's going on, owner changeover, promotions, things along those lines. So a little more abstract view to NBL, but I think it's going to be good for the league. So I'm really excited for that. So make sure, like I said, you guys tune in next week, as we're going to have Shopmaster on the show to discuss a little bit about EA Game Changers. I'd like to thank all of you guys for listening. I want to thank TFA for joining us tonight for our predictions. I think most of you guys are going to enjoy what you're hearing. And make sure you follow us along as we change the format here on the Verts Podcast and we push towards the future. For all of us here at the Verts Podcast, thank you guys for tuning in, and see you next week.